Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. During the Q&A session, if you would like to ask a question, you may press star one on your phone. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. John Gonzalez. You may begin.
Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Intermediaries Helping Consumers Get Banked to Receive Tax Refunds and Economic Impact Payments. For those requesting captions, unfortunately, those will not be available live. However, we will have them available in the recording, which will be posted in approximately 1 week. The recording will be located in the FDIC Community Affairs Past Events webpage. This presentation represents the views of speakers and not necessarily those of the FDIC or its board of directors. This presentation cannot be reproduced or distributed by a third party or on a third party website. For today's call, you may connect with event speakers by opening the chat window, then select all participants in order to type and enter your comments or questions. Since we had over 800 registrants for this event, we received several questions in advance. We have forwarded your questions to our speakers, and our hosts will be reading some of those questions later. We also received some questions that we can easily address in the chat instead. So please monitor the chat for useful information and links we may provide. If we don't get to your question during the meeting, we will follow up. So you may email questions after the webinar to MySowell, that's MISOWELL @FDIC.gov. Please also feel free to share ideas, suggestions, and relevant links to today's topic. This will keep our remote workshop interactive. Please be mindful that all participants can see comments in the chat. I'll now turn it over to Mia Sowell, Senior Community Affairs Specialist at the FDIC. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you, John. We are excited to welcome workers of community-based organizations and local governments who provide direct services to low and moderate income consumers. Tax season and COVID relief government payments lend an unprecedented opportunity to bring people into the banking system. And the FDIC wants to ensure you are well equipped with resources to assist consumers to open bank accounts. Next slide. Today's webinar is hosted by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, an independent agency created by Congress to maintain stability and public confidence in the nation's financial system. You can learn more about our mission, leadership, and various initiatives by going to FDIC.gov. FDIC's Community Affairs team promotes economic inclusion and community development activities that support low and moderate income households in underserved communities. You may find information about FDIC's Community Affairs events, financial education tools, and national initiatives at FDIC.gov/consumers/community. Our objective for today's webinar is simple. We want to provide community practitioners with useful information and resources which guide low and moderate income consumers to successfully open a bank account. We'll share various resources about bank account benefits and ways to open the accounts remotely. And we'll provide other resources from the federal government related to economic impact payments. You can find a copy of today's agenda in the email that was sent to you, along with the presentation slides and speaker biographies. In the interest of time, we will not read speaker biographies during the event, but each speaker will be introduced prior to their portion of today's agenda. Next, Liz Ortiz, FDIC's Deputy Director of Consumer and Community Affairs, will provide opening remarks. Next slide. Liz?
Thank you, Mia. The FDIC is pleased to host today's webinar so that our partners, including community-based organizations and local government, are equipped to assist consumers who still do not have a bank account and will likely receive a tax refund, tax credit, or economic impact payment in the coming weeks. We are pleased that nearly 1,000 organizations have registered. Over half of today's attendees are from nonprofit organizations. Around 20% of you represent federal, state, and local government, and with the rest evenly split between financial institutions and educational organizations. I thank you all for joining. It's hard not to reflect for a minute about where we have been. Almost exactly 1 year ago, the country began shutting down. We came to terms with the pandemic. The CARES Act was passed in April 2020, and with it, the first round of economic impact payments. As you know, industry, government, and communities across the country all agreed that it was essential to get financial assistance to the families most in need and do it quickly and safely, which meant making it possible for as many people as possible to open a bank account. FDIC developed a landing page dedicated to this effort. You know it today as #GetBanked. ICBA, ABA, and CFE all contributed important information about financial institutions that could open accounts for consumers remotely, and as important, the availability of accounts that work for consumers. The IRS posted links to it on its website, as did other federal agencies, and over the past year, we have received over 1 million visitors to FDIC.gov. 1 year later, the work continues. With the American Rescue Plan, there will be a third round of EIP payments, and we are here today to continue our collaboration. The banking industry, represented today by the ICBA, local community networks that connect families to banking relationships, represented by CFE and Bank on Gaithersburg, as well as CFPB, who has worked hard over the past year to develop resources that will assist all of us in reaching into those communities that have been hit the hardest and at the same time are hardest to reach with financial assistance. You will hear from these folks directly in just a few minutes. According to the FDIC's 2019 survey, How America Banks, over 7 million households in the United States do not have a bank account. Today, we are providing detailed information to answer questions that you may hear your clients ask you. How do I find a bank? How do I open a bank account? And where do I go next? The FDIC and our partners want to collaborate with all of you to make sure you have the resources to guide low and moderate income consumers that want to begin a banking relationship. We also ask you to be a partner by sharing the information with and throughout your networks, passing it on to your clients, and amplifying the message, Get Banked. A clear lesson from this pandemic is that individuals and businesses without these relationships are also living and working in communities hardest hit by COVID. We encourage you to work with the FDIC Community Affairs Specialists nationwide who can connect you with our local GetBanked efforts and other partners who can assist you. A great outcome from today's call would be that every organization in attendance has a goal to connect with their local financial institutions or their FDIC Community Affairs Specialist. You can also help by sharing resources via social media and posting the FDIC's GetBanked webpage in your websites and emailing your contacts. Next slide, please. Economic inclusion is integral to the FDIC's mission of maintaining stability and public confidence in the nation's financial system. The FDIC promotes affordable, insured transaction and savings accounts, and it is our vision that all Americans have access to secure and affordable insured banking services, and that every bank offers affordable transactions and savings accounts for consumers. Having a bank account is critical for low and moderate income households to receive timely income tax refunds, tax credits, stimulus payments, unemployment benefits, and other government financial assistance. The sooner they become connected with a banking relationship, families can save, build credit, buy a home, or even start a business, and right now, get the funds that they need to stay afloat and survive. We want to thank you again for joining us today, and I turn it over back to Mia.
Thank you, Liz. My colleague Paola Diaz and I will walk you through the FDIC.gov/GetBanked webpage. But first, we would like to begin with a question where we poll the audience on a topic, and you will have 2 minutes to enter your response. We'll have a few of these throughout our time together today. So let's take a look at the first polling question on the next slide. So the polling question is displayed on the right side of your screen. We'd like to see how many of you are familiar with some of the FDIC resources that are available to you. You have 2 minutes to submit your responses. Please note that this is a 4-part question, and each of them requires a response of either yes, no, or I'm interested. You may click on Submit when you have finished answering all 4 questions. Your selections will not be shared with the audience, but will be helpful for our follow-up purposes after the webinar. As you submit your responses, Paola and I will get started with an overview of the GetBanked webpage.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Mia, for the opportunity to join you. We've included a screenshot of our GetBanked webpage, so we encourage the audience to follow along with us. We've highlighted some resources on the page, and given that so many hard-to-reach beneficiaries of COVID relief government payments may be individuals with limited English proficiency, one recent update to our page is the availability in Spanish. So notice near the top where it says Vea esta página en español.
That's great. You know, expanding account access to consumers with low and moderate income is a top priority for the FDIC and is encouraged by the FDIC chairman.
Well, that's great too, but why does the FDIC support account opening, Mia?
So for many people without bank accounts, they may not understand why it's important to have one, particularly if they never had a bank account or have become accustomed to making do without one. We have resources that address some of the questions that consumers may have about why it's even important to have a bank account. So that is why one of the first resources that we feature on this page is the top reasons to get banked. It includes 10 reasons and considerations for someone to open a bank account to actually make that first step to starting a banking relationship. Things such as your money is safe at a bank, you can get your money faster with no check cashing fees, and how you have access to other products from the bank once you've established a relationship through a bank account, such as credit cards, auto loans, and home mortgages. So this flyer is a one-page PDF that may be printed or distributed electronically, so we encourage you and our audience to share this with your clients.
And I will tell you about another important resource, our checklist. These can help consumers determine what kind of bank account meets their individual needs. The checklist basically serves 2 purposes. 1, it educates about bank account features such as monthly fees, overdraft fees, notifications about account usage to help account holders manage their account balances. And number 2, it helps determine the most important features for individual needs. This tool can be used when a consumer is shopping for a bank account, and it can also be printed and downloaded to distribute electronically.
So as you continue to scroll down the page, you will see a video on the right, which is our public service announcement for consumers about why it's time to get banked. It addresses the benefits of having a bank account and covers much of the information in the top reasons to open a bank account flyer.
And that video is also available in Spanish, featuring me. Both videos are about 2 minutes long, and anyone can use them to promote the concept and importance of a bank account opening to build wealth and become a shareholder of the U.S. economy, as our FDIC Chairman Matt Williams says in the opening quote of the page.
Great. And on the left side of the screen, you'll see a section for finding a bank and opening an account online, including Bank Find, which is an FDIC tool which helps locate FDIC-insured banks in your area. FDIC also established partnerships with intermediaries who can help consumers find a bank and open an account online. Links to these resources are front and center on our page. This information is very important during the pandemic because some branches are closed or have limited hours. 2 of our partners will discuss how to access this information from the featured Bank On website and the Independent Community Bankers of America website.
And the American Banker Association is not with us today because the consumer page actually directs back to the Bank On webpage as well as the FDIC GetBanked webpage. However, they do have valuable advice for consumers looking to choose a bank account. You can check it out.
And lastly, the webpage includes additional FDIC resources that are useful to someone who may have recently opened a bank account and also has useful tips. So for example, there is a link to a frequently asked questions document for bank customers who may have been impacted by COVID-19 and are expecting an economic impact payment. Money Smart, which are the FDIC's financial education tools that most of you are probably familiar with. FDIC Consumer News, which consists of a monthly newsletter to consumers providing practical guidance on becoming a smarter, safer user of financial services. It includes helpful hints and common sense strategies to protect and stretch your hard-earned dollars.
And consumer news are also available in both English and Spanish and can be viewed via online or Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We encourage you to share this resource on your website. Let's get information into the hands and minds of those who will benefit from these topics. These articles are printable or can be shared digitally.
FDIC Consumer Resource Center allows you to contact the FDIC with any questions, check on your deposit insurance using our electronic deposit insurance estimator, and subscribe to FDIC publications, listen to podcasts, and more.
And this concludes our overview of the GetBanked webpage and its resources. Now you will hear from some of our guests who will share their valuable resources with you about getting consumers banked.
Okay. So first we'll hear from David Rothstein, Senior Principal and the lead for the National Bank On Initiative. Next slide, please. David?
Hi, thanks so much for hosting this webinar and bringing so many people, more than 300 people, to talk about banking access. I'm David Rothstein with the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, and I'm very excited to continue to work on the Bank On initiative. You can start the slides, please. So I really appreciated Mia touching on this when we first started the webinar, but I just wanted to touch on some of the ways in which a lot of the clients that you all are working with or people in your community are unfortunately spending money on fringe financial services that they wouldn't have to spend money on if they were banked. We know that the average unbanked person spends about 5% of their income on alternative financial services, and this obviously amounts to thousands of dollars a year and many thousands of dollars over their lifetime. Banking is also really important because it touches other programs and other pieces where people are very interested in making gains in financial empowerment. So in some of our work in another program that we have in our financial empowerment centers that provide one-on-one financial counseling as a free public service, we found that unbanked financial counseling clients were half as likely to increase their savings and over a third less likely to establish a new credit score if that was their goal. So having a bank account is that pivotal key first step in all things financial empowerment and safety. Even just having a bank account during counseling, we found that clients were 8 times more likely to increase their savings relative to those who never became banked. You can go to the next slide. So a little bit about the Bank On initiative. We're very excited at the growth this year and, of course, over the last 5 years now. This map shows with the white dots where we have Bank On coalitions, and hopefully some are reflected in your markets, whether you're a financial institution or a nonprofit community partner. The white dots represent where all those coalitions are located. A few are state coalitions, such as in Arkansas and in Maryland, but most are municipal level coalitions. We're also extremely pleased that we have more than 75 certified accounts right now, representing credit unions and financial institutions of all shapes and sizes and located all over the country. Some with as many as thousands of branches, and others with literally 1 or 2 branches. So the Bank On certification process, which I'll talk about in a minute, really represents a widespread array of financial institutions in terms of their shape and size and where they're located in communities. You can go to the next slide. So the Bank on National Account Standards, and this is a really important piece, we believe, of safe banking, is that the standards were designed 7 years ago with input from groups like the FDIC and like trade associations, including the American Banker Association and Independent Banker Association, with the idea of really helping to solve the problems that individuals listed as reasons why they're not in the banking system. So you heard the discussion of the unbanked household survey, which I think is critical. These Bank on National Account Standards really address those. So the first is that to receive certification, and the certification is universal. So banks, credit unions, they all have to meet the same features of an account to get their certification. The first is around safety. These accounts do not have overdraft or insufficient fund charges of any kind, meaning that zero means zero. So you really can't go under $0 in these accounts. Most of them are checklist checking accounts, meaning that you wouldn't be able to post-date a check if you didn't have the money in the account. So these generally are good funds model accounts, and you can spend what you have in the account. You can use an ATM. You can withdraw money in a branch. You can use online bill pay or get a money order. And that is safe for the banks and safe for the individual customer. There's also no additional fees outside of a possible monthly maintenance fee. So for instance, there are no dormancy or activation or early closure fees with this account as well. The affordability of the account really addresses the number one reason why individuals say that they don't have a bank account. They say it's too expensive to create or maintain. So the affordability factor shows that we have monthly fees of $5 or less with a low minimum opening deposit of $25 or less. So it's easy to open this account, and it's cost effective to maintain this account. Additionally, these accounts are fully functional. So some of you may remember or have in your mind what are often referred to as second chance checking accounts, which generally are pretty costly for an individual and sometimes can be as much as $20 or so a month, but also you don't have real functionality with those accounts. You can't pay bills sometimes. Withdrawals are limited. So it doesn't work as well for individuals as these accounts do, which again are fully functional. You can go into a branch, you can use online banking, mobile banking, you have a surcharge-free ATM network that you're part of. It allows a lot of freedom of choice and huge functionality for individuals. You can go to the next slide. I'm happy to talk more one-on-one with individual financial institutions about the other benefits of certification, of getting this Bank On certification and working with us to get this account into the community. But suffice to say that these accounts add new people to your customer base. They help you round out your suite of accounts. This is a great base account. It's very popular. And additionally, we hear from financial institutions that it's enabled them to get additional and stronger CRA credit, which is something obviously to talk to your examiner about. You can go to the next slide. One of the things I also wanted to touch on is that these accounts are really popular. The Bank On market is really robust. We partner right now with the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis to do our national data work for Bank On. And in the latest data reporting, we found that with just 10 financial institutions reporting, meaning this isn't the entire universe, nearly 800,000 new accounts were opened, and 75% of those accounts were completely new customers to the financial institution, which is our best proxy for, one, people that were outside of the banking system, and two, people who were not likely to open an account with the particular financial institution that they chose without this account being there. Additionally, one of the questions that we often get is, will people just get a direct deposit of their tax refund into this account and then drain the account and be back to an all-cash economy? The data does not show that trend at all. In fact, pilot banks who were part of this study showed millions of transactions in debit transactions and swipes. So in other words, people are using this account just like any other regular checking account. You can go to the next slide. So one of the pieces, and this I think is a great hook for our discussion today, is, and we had some questions that came in about this, one of the ways to meet clients where they're at or meet customers where they're at is to figure out where people are getting paid, where are they getting reimbursed, where are they receiving money, because behavioral economics shows us that that's the best time to talk to somebody about the benefits of a bank account. It's hard to talk to somebody about opening a bank account if they have no money coming in or if they're not thinking about spending money at that time. But when you're talking about those two factors, it makes it easier to talk to them about bank accounts and show them the promise that these accounts really provide. So we've been really successful in several programs. One of the biggest ones is our Summer Jobs Connect program, which connects first-time workers in city government to a bank account, and their first paycheck goes through direct deposit into one of these accounts. And it's seamlessly integrated into their orientation process. So it's not a one-off. And that's the big part of these program integrations that we're looking for. We are currently working in Maryland, in Ohio, other places to integrate banking access into tax time to help people open a bank account before they even get their taxes done so that they have their account number and can use it when they're getting their tax refund. And this is obviously an ongoing process and something that's going on right now. And Tawanna from Maryland is going to talk about the work that they're doing there. You can go to the next slide. One of our biggest successes, and I'm thrilled that Mia and Liz and others from the FDIC are on the call because they did so much work to make this happen. But we really sprung into action for proof and concept of Bank On in late March and into April of this last year, so almost a year ago now. We realized, as many did, that the quick turnaround for stimulus payments and that first stimulus payment through the IRS was going to hit people who didn't have bank accounts. Liz mentioned the 7 million or so households without bank accounts, and when COVID hit, it could be more because of the quick downturn and recession that ensued. So we worked with the FDIC, the IRS, and the CDC to guide people to a micro website that we created, which focused on showing people which accounts that were Bank On certified could be opened online, and that you could instantly get an account number and enter in that account number to the IRS website portal, so that instead of receiving a paper check for your stimulus, you could receive that money through direct deposit, direct to your bank account. It's quicker, it's safer. It made everybody's lives easier who went through that process. The last number I heard on this, and these were not all Bank On accounts, I want to be really clear about that. The last number I heard about people using the portal was around 9 million people used the portal to enter in bank account information to update their profile with the IRS to get their payments through direct deposit. You can go to the next slide. One of the other questions that we got asked before this webinar started was around how do you talk to people about bank accounts, and how do you get them interested in a bank account if they've had some issues in the past or were concerned. These are some of the things that tested really well in the focus group work that we've done. Things like avoiding surprise fees and maintaining control of your money. Certainly during this COVID time period, talking about being able to deposit funds remotely, whether they're government funds or unemployment benefit funds. Being able to pay your bills remotely, that became a big thing. A lot of people weren't comfortable or able to go to a Western Union or a check casher and do a bill payment from there anymore. So this became a really important way for people to also pay bills and remain in control of their finances. The other question we got asked that I don't have a particular slide on is around when people are looking to open a bank account, how can we ensure and help them get through the entire process? Such a good question. One of the ways that financial institutions can help with that is to ensure that, one, listed on their website or their marketing material, social media, brochures, whatever it might be, but listing the pieces of information that a person would need to open the bank account is a really helpful process. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm doing a process online and it asks me for something that I don't have, or I have to go into the basement and open, a file folder to locate a birth certificate or something like that, each time that something like that happens, I'm less likely to complete the form, right? So knowing ahead of time that you need an ID and that you need a permanent address or whatever it might be, and having those pieces of information on hand, especially if you're working with a client, those are all things that make the account facilitation process go smoother for individuals. That's what I have for you today. You can go to the next slide, which has some of my contact information. I am more than happy to talk with the financial institution about how to get a bank on account certified. I'm certainly happy to talk with any programs that are out there who are looking to integrate banking access into their program work. Specifically, I know that we're focused on stimulus and tax time discussions here today. If your program is doing that kind of work, I'm happy to share some of the best practices that our coalitions have seen. And again, help you think through what might be some ways to really utilize this GetBanked message as again, I think Liz indicated, as a third round of stimulus is looming close here. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for being part of the Bank On family if you're on this phone and you're part of that.
Great. David, thank you for sharing such great information, in particular how those accounts can be integrated into various programs and services that our audience today can consider at their respective organizations and local governments. So before we hear from our next guest, we're going to go to our second polling question, and we'd like to get a feel for whether our audience has collaborated with the Bank On Coalition, and also if they have experience helping their clients open a bank account. Again, the polling question is displayed on the right side of your screen, and you have 2 minutes to submit your responses, and it's a two-part question. Again, your answers will not be shared with the audience. So as you submit your responses, then I'd like to introduce our next speaker in the next slide. Our next speaker is Tawanna Lawson. She's the project manager for the city of Gaithersburg, which is in Maryland, and she's the leader of Bank On Gaithersburg, which is a Bank On coalition. So Tawanna, if you'd like to turn on your camera, please feel free to do so. And as a background, Tawanna was invited to share her experience as both a local government agency who provides direct services to low and moderate income consumers, and also as a Bank On coalition member who facilitates partnerships amongst her organization, financial institutions, and community-based organizations. Bank On Gaithersburg is also engaged in providing tax preparation assistance to consumers through the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, or VITA. So, Tawanna, let's go ahead and just jump right in. If possible, I'd like if you could just share a little bit with our audience today about ways that the Bank On Gaithersburg Coalition is helping their clients open bank accounts to receive tax refunds during the pandemic.
Yes. Hello, everybody. So, again, I'm Tawanna. I work for the city of Gaithersburg. We have a Gaithersburg site through VITA. Our partner is the Community Action Agency here in Montgomery County. Typically, pre-COVID, we have the taxes going on. We have about 25 appointments each Monday, and we have resource tables that provide financial education and the banks and credit unions there to open up accounts. So typically, we would talk to these individuals face-to-face, give them some information in regards to these accounts, and then have them decide which bank they would want to go to open those accounts so that they can get their refund. Now that everything is virtual, we are currently right now utilizing a Financial Navigator program. So our VITA team utilizes our link for the Financial Navigator program, and they're entering those information into that system so a navigator can make contact with them to open up an account or connect them to an actual bank. If it's become difficult or the VITA site individuals are having a hard time keeping up, then I'm that connector. So they would then make contact with me, and then I would connect that individual to an actual bank that we're working with Bank On Gaithersburg.
That's really great that the coalition's been able to be so effective serving its local residents during these difficult times and making adjustments to do so. and more importantly, really having that technical assistance available to guide the consumers to actually open the bank account. So thank you so much for sharing that. Are there any other programs that you'd like to highlight for us that focus on bank account access that may not be related to tax season, but maybe that the city and coalition is involved in even during the pandemic?
Sure. So there's a few programs that we have. We work very closely with CFDs. So there's a couple of programs. So we work with our Department of Parks and Rec for our youth who are going into summer jobs. And so during their orientation, because it's mandatory for the city of Gaithersburg to have direct deposit, and these teams are working specifically for the city of Gaithersburg, Bank on Gaithersburg is around the table during their orientation so that they can open accounts then. So when they are starting to get paid, their money is going into an actual account. We recently had, before the pandemic came about, we had a program called Extreme Finance, and it was linked with the coalition and BB&T. They're currently now Truist since they've merged with SunTrust. So these kids, it was 50 kids, middle school and high school. They would go through a program of 10 financial workshops, and their last workshop was a financial fair. So they would typically learn about budgeting, money management, insurance, homeownership, credit, all the good stuff in regards to financial education. They also was involved in the Arrow Tag. We try to make it fun, connecting kids to fun activities and financial education, because sometimes, you know, talking about finances is not something that youth are accustomed to. And so at the end, they would open up accounts with BB&T, and Bank on Gaithersburg provided each kid with $250 to go into their account. So those are a couple of programs that we've done. Our coalition members are going, I know there's been a couple of questions in regards to the homeless population. So at least for us in Montgomery County, we link with our shelters that are in Montgomery County, where our coalition members and or banks and credit unions will go on site to those shelters to discuss ways that they can help those homeless individuals open up accounts and even, you know, credit counseling and so on and so forth. So depending on what that individual needs help with is what our coalition will move through to get them help.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You know, with these economic impact payments that have already been distributed and the additional that's on the way, that is definitely questions that people have, in particular those that may not have permanent address. So thank you for sharing that. You know, there are oftentimes local governments that are ready and available to offer that assistance. So thank you. Well, thank you for sharing that information and your experience with us today. I'm sure we will have some questions for you from the audience towards the end of the webinar today.
Thank you.
Okay. Next slide.
And our next speaker is Rob Verfield, Executive Vice President and Marketing Officer of the Independent Community Bankers of America. Next slide. Rob, join us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Super. Well, thank you guys for inviting me today. We are thrilled to be here as ICBA, the Independent Community Banks of America, and thrilled to be part of the solution to get folks banked, especially during this time of, you know, economic impact payments and stimulus. We move to the next slide. We can just dive in. I wanted to start with really just a cursory overview of a question that a lot of consumers have been asking, which is, what is a community bank? Community banks are fundamentally locally focused. They channel most of their loans back into the communities where their depositors live and work, helping to keep a vibrant community in which they are a part of. You know, community banks largely represent a lot of small businesses within local areas. And in fact, community banks are also, in many cases, small businesses. So it's really a unified component. Now, as we know, they are, as I mentioned, they are community oriented, and so they are deeply involved in local community affairs, whether that's, you know, the high school or the civic organization. It really differs for the type of environment that we're talking about. But they are well positioned because, of their visibility and of their convenience to really advance banking within the communities that they serve. They have 50,000 locations across the country. They make up about 99% of all banks. They are the only, this I always find fascinating, they are in fact the only physical banking presence in one of 3 U.S. counties. One thing that's often overlooked too is they employ nearly 750,000 Americans, again, as that small business within those communities that they serve. Also really important just to call out, and I mentioned this about, community banks being an ally of the small business and of Main Street. You've heard a lot, and the reason a lot of questions have been asking, we've seen the traffic around what is a community bank. That question into Google skyrocket partially because of the Paycheck Protection Program. And community banks were pivotal in that process, delivering over 60% of those loans, but just as importantly, saving an estimated 33.7 million jobs. So they've been a key ally in protecting jobs nationwide through this pandemic. So if we go to the next slide, it's important too to think about, just who is ICBA, right, and what our mission is. Our goal and our mission is to create an environment where community banks flourish. We are the trade association that represents, these community banks exclusively. But as a key part of that mission, we are fundamentally in the business of introducing consumers and small businesses alike to the choice that is, the option that is community banking, and advancing financial education and literacy that does help underserved, disadvantaged, and emerging markets. One of the things I talked about PPP, but here are some notes that I thought was important probably to share around that, is 72.6% of PPP loans in 2020 were in fact to minority-owned small businesses, and 71% were to women-owned small businesses. Again, focus on small businesses, but we're talking about significant employers in the communities that they call home. But importantly, just to drive home this last piece that, community banks have a symbiotic relationship with the communities they serve. Their success, the community success is a community bank success. So that unifying factor is really what makes community banking unique and really why we're excited about this opportunity too, that shared success. And what you'll see on the right down the bottom of this PowerPoint slide is this website that we have called BankLocalyorg. And BankLocally is really just about telling the story, again, of differentiation, the differentiation that is community banking. But it also does speak to, what it means to have a bank account and, what that means to, your financial success, what it takes to start a new bank account, what it takes to switch a bank account. And one of the key components to that, if you go to the next slide, is fundamentally the end of the, I'm a marketing guy, so bear with me, the end of the funnel, right, which is the community bank directory. I mentioned, that there are quite a few branches throughout the country. There's 5,000 total banks, but I think there's about 50,000 locations throughout the country. What you see here is our community bank directory, which can help you find a bank in your neck of the woods, in your community, so that you can experience that shared success. And when we learned about this opportunity, and we wanted to further expand upon, this directory and really showcase the ability for some of our member banks to allow for a new account opening remotely, online, and with zero balance down, we created this website, which is linked from the GetBanked site. And we are constantly, I think right now on a biannual basis, but we're going to speed that up. We are reaching out to our membership. We are making sure that we are growing this roster of community banks that do in fact offer the remote or online account opening services with no balance. We might be adjusting that a little bit just to sort of open it up to maybe a smaller balance, but as of right now, what you see represented here is the ability for some of our member banks to allow for that type of account opening. So, we are, this is a resource that that we think is incredibly important, and we're thrilled with what the FDIC is doing and with the GetBanked movement. Again, we're going to continue to update this list, so the link from that website, anytime people click through it, they're going to see the newest list that we have collected. But again, just want to round it out. Thank you all for having us today. And, what we're trying to do is create more relationships. This directory will help create some long-term relationships with community banks in the communities that we live and we call home. And, hopefully that long-term relationship will lead to, increased financial security. So I'd urge you to connect with a community bank in your community, use this resource, and happy to see it continue to flourish.
Thank you so much, Rob. And as Liz indicated at the beginning, we hope our audience is motivated to collaborate more with community banks and go to your webpage to help their clients opening a bank account remotely, or just find the community bank near them with your mapping tool. Our next speaker is David Kaminsky, Senior Policy Analyst from the Office of Community Affairs of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He's a very good friend of ours, and we have been working tirelessly on many initiatives. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Paula. So great to be here today and to join all these great speakers to talk about this really important topic. So the CFPB has been working closely with the FDIC on initiatives to help U.S. Treasury and the IRS to reach the hardest to reach populations with economic impact payments, and we're very supportive of all the work that's been talked about so far today and working with the FDIC. And for all those listening, what you will hopefully do with the information you learned today is to help customers and clients open bank accounts that will be very helpful so they can, for example, receive their tax refunds or the COVID relief payments safely and securely and more quickly via direct deposit in their account. Next slide, please. So this is our central hub page that is regularly updated and from which you can navigate to all the COVID response resources that we've developed, not just about opening accounts, but a lot of other resources. On this page, we have links to other subpages on how to protect your housing situation, whether you're a homeowner or a renter, how to manage your finances, including dealing with debt and credit issues, how to deal with student loans, how to avoid scams, and resources for special populations, including older adults and families, service members and vets, small businesses, and parents and children. And much of the content is written, although there are some videos that we've created as well. And all the written content is available in 6 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, and Tagalog. Next slide, please. So the Bureau launched this interagency housing website basically this summer with in collaboration with the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Federal Home Finance Agency. This website is a one-stop shop for consumers to find accurate information about relief options available to them during the pandemic. And you can find this website if you go straight to consumerfinance.gov/housing. And people with loans from HUD or from the VA or USDA have special protections as a result of various COVID legislation that's been passed. And if you know anyone behind on their mortgage or rent, please direct them here. Next slide, please. So this is our current page on how to get the second round of economic impact payments, including information on who is eligible, how to claim the credit, if you've not received it. And we pay particular attention to providing information for people who either did not automatically receive the payment or who did not receive the full amount for which they are eligible. And after the first round of payments, I think David had cited the number, there was like 8 to 12 million people who probably did not receive an initial payment because their income was so low that they weren't required to file a tax return, and they weren't in any of the other systems, like they didn't receive Social Security or veterans benefits or other benefit recipients who would have automatically received payments. So basically, the IRS and the Bureau of Fiscal Service did not have access to their information. So for round 1 last year of EIP, the IRS set up this non-filers portal to assist people in that circumstance, and a number of people that did not receive the payment was reduced for round 2. And so we're working on content right now for round 3. The legislation that just got passed yesterday and will be signed tomorrow of the EIP, and we'll have more details on who's eligible, how the money will be distributed, and probably what we'll do is rather than creating a single page or for each round, we'll probably put them all together on a consolidated page so that people can see side by side who is eligible and how they receive those payments, because there are still people that have not received round 1 and round 2 payments, and then there will be more people who will receive round 3 once those payments start going out. Next slide, please. So this is our page that we put up just prior to the opening of tax season on all the benefits of filing a tax return in 2021. And again, this is focused primarily on people who may not have normally filed a tax return because their income is so low and it's below the tax filing threshold. And on this page, we focus on the various benefits of filing, including receiving the EIP, which we've talked about a lot today, but also claiming any over-withholding if they had earned income, and also claiming the earned income tax credit and child tax credit if people are eligible. And specifically related to the EITC and the CTC, we have information on utilizing the look-back provision to allow people to claim those refundable credits based on 2019 rather than 2020 income if it allows them to increase the amount of credit they receive. And because so many people had their earned income changed dramatically in 2020, they might qualify for a higher refund by using the 2019 income as the basis for qualifying for the credit. And like the EIP page that I showed you previously, we'll be updating this page or perhaps creating a new page about changes that occurred as a result of this recently passed legislation regarding the earned income tax credit and child tax credit eligibility, once we have all the details from the legislation. So lastly, I just want to say, I know we're short on time, but we work closely with the VITA community every year, primarily around promoting saving at tax time. And this year it's been pretty complicated because most of the VITA community has had to go to a virtual tax filing environment, so it makes it more difficult to literally prepare a return or to do things like promoting saving. But we're working with that network and that coalition closely, and all the VITA providers around the country to provide current information to consumers and to support the VITA programs that are doing this important work of helping people file their returns. And we know that the VITA capacity has been reduced pretty considerably this year because a lot of programs were not able to operate at full capacity, and a lot of them had to convert to a virtual filing environment. So, in talking to the IRS, we know that a lot of VITA programs are literally, they have no more capacity to serve people. So we suggest for anybody who's trying to give information to their customers or clients about how to file their tax return and get it done for free, to go to the IRS locator page to see if there's a VITA program in their community. And if not, to utilize some other free resources like the My Free Taxes model, which is run by the United Way Worldwide. So if you can go to the United Way Worldwide page, you can find a link to My Free Taxes. Or if all else fails, to use the Free File Alliance portal, which is available on the IRS website, and you can navigate to various tax software, which is made available for free if you have the technology skills to prepare your own return. So with that, I'll stop, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you today.
Well, thank you, David. CFPB has some great information on their website to help consumers protect their finances during the pandemic, as well as where to go to get assistance. So thank you. Next slide, please. Briefly, this slide is just providing some additional resources from the FDIC and other federal government agencies that our audience may find useful to share with their consumers. And there's information there regarding financial education programs, affordable housing, economic impacts, and tax refund questions, as well as being aware of fraud and scams. So quickly, in the essence of time, before we move to our Q&A session, I just wanted to briefly provide some information regarding how the FDIC's commitment to economic inclusion is communicated to banks, because we know that consumers are only able to access affordable banking services to the extent that banks offer these affordable accounts. So we welcome you to pass this information along to any of your bank partners, which provides several FDIC resources, including the GetBanked webpage. But we make sure that they're informed about these needs in the community, including through our survey, the Unbanked Household Survey, which we shared with you earlier. Next slide, please. And lastly, we keep banks informed about developments in our banking industry regarding affordable accounts through research that's available through regulatory agencies. We also recommend that they assess the benefits of working with a local network that promotes economic inclusion, such as our Alliance for Economic Inclusion or Bank on Coalitions. And we inform them about resources that provide assistance to banks that make it easier for them to offer affordable accounts. And so we have our final polling question, which Paola.
Sure. Well, we have run out of time, frankly, but thankfully all of our speakers were very gracious to be paying attention to the chat, and many of them addressed a lot of the questions that people were asking already during their remarks. And I would just ask for the last minute we have left that you please take the time to answer the last polling question for us. And please rest assured, we have captured all of your comments in questions during registration as well as during the chat, and we will be making an effort to reach out to you, potentially through our community affairs specialists or directly, or perhaps we might issue a supplement to the recording of the webinar whenever it is posted in the website. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you. And so lastly, we'll just close by saying thank you for attending today's webinar. If you would like more information about any of today's topics, you may contact me. My information is on the next slide. And so as Paola indicated, we will be responding and going through the other questions that were submitted, and we'll follow up. And we really encourage you to complete this last polling question, which also indicates whether your organization will consider adding a link to our GetBanked webpage. Otherwise, we continue to encourage you to promote it via social media using the hashtag GetBanked. And also, if you're interested in connecting with our local community affairs specialists, then you can indicate so in the poll. And you still have about a minute and a half left in the poll before it closes so that you can indicate that interest. So with that, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you very much for attending.
And that does conclude today's conference call. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.